Awesome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Enclosed Cosmology. Today we are going to be talking about Nimrod, a very big topic in the Bible, in my opinion. I'm super excited to get into this and kind of uh, move along. So I'll go ahead and say hello to my brother as always. Guys, always here. Anthony, what is up, brother?
All right, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Shabbat Shalom, Frank. Shabbat Shalom, Vader, and everybody in the chat. Um,
People are saying that
Uh, blank.
that
It
it's
went blank.
buffering. Is that happening for
Yeah, it went
everyone?
blank. It's blank for me. It's back now.
All right, let's
Let
see
me
what's
see if
going on
I can
currently.
hear it.
All
Does that
right.
happen? All right, we're back.
Okay, I'm not sure what's happening, guys. It's saying that something happened. This has nothing to do with my side. It's just telling me that my video is interlaced and it's not supported interlace. I have no idea what that means. There was just an update to my streaming software. So I'm wondering if maybe that has to do with it. Hopefully we're back and we're good.
Yeah.
Please let me know if anything else happens, guys. But anyways, um, yeah.
I
So
think my singing broke the stream, Vader.
that's funny. Gosh. All right. Well, yeah, again, if anything pops up, but yeah, let's kind of get into it. So we're going to be talking about Nimrod. Before on our last true episode, we were just getting into Nimrod, and we were just getting into Genesis 10, as well as 11. So we read a little bit of Genesis 10 last time, but we kind of stopped it a kind of portion way through. So we'll go ahead and read 10 and 11 together real quick. I'll go ahead and share it on screen, and then we'll kind of move on from there. Does that sound good to y'all?
I do have a quick question. Are we going to read Genesis 10 and 11 together, like just like one quick through, or are we going to stop it at 11 and discuss maybe some Nimrod stuff, and then
Uh,
read? Are we going to break it up? Is what I'm
Totally.
asking.
So, like for instance, last time we read Genesis, we read all the way till 9.
Right.
And just to kind of save us some time, because most of this in sorry, in 10 isn't necessarily dealing with what we are. So I'm just gonna start from 9, and then we'll go through this, and then we'll go through 11, and then we'll talk about 11 as we go through it. Um, so this is Genesis 9, 10:9. I'm going to go ahead and share it on the screen.
Are you starting in verse 9?
Yeah, just because we've already read this before in episode 9. Um, we got down to Nimrod and we kind of stopped. So this is it basically is going over all the different sons. It gets to Nimrod. It says he was a mighty hunter before. It will 8. And Cush begot Nimrod, who began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherever it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Inrik, and Akkad, and Calneh, and the land of Shinar. Out of the land went forth Azor, and buildeth Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calah, and resin between Nineveh and Calah, the same is a great city. And Mizraim begot Ludum, and Neam, and Liham. You know what? I'm not going to go through this, guys. They have a lot of. It's much easier to read this in your heads. So we know, and then those came, and then we have the Canaanites from uh, from that same line, and we're going through. We have all the different lines, and I'm just gonna skip to the bottom. And I know I could read this. I know y'all can read this. I'm just saving some time, guys. So please forgive me. And so in 31, these are the sons of Shem after the families after their tongue in their lands after the nation. These are the families of the sons of Noah after their generation in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. So right here we have all of these nations that are rising up together, and this is after the flood. So let's go ahead and move on to 11. Was there anything that either of y'all want to pick out on 10?
There's a lot I want to read.
Okay.
Uh, uh, yeah, you just kind of breezed right on through
Oh
the
yeah.
whole thing, and there's so much.
Okay, yeah, yeah. You go ahead and read it for us all.
Um, I'm trying to find exactly where we started, but
Oh, you could just start off at 10. That's fine.
how about 9?
Yeah, I started out at 8, but either or.
Uh, and and see the Targum's not numbered, so I'm giving it my best shot here. And Telsar, which was built between Nineveh and Hadith, that is a great city. Is that sound about where you started up?
No, you need to go up more like another couple.
Start right here at this paragraph. How about this?
Sure.
From these were distributed the tribes of the islands of the Gentiles, everyone according to his language, to his kindred and their nations, and the sons of Shem, Cush, and Mizraim, and Put and Canaan. And the name of their provinces, Arabia and Mizraim and Alakrak and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Sheba and Havilah and Sabta and Rama and Sebka, and the name of their provinces, Shinrai and Hindikai and Samdai and Lubai and Zingai. And the sons of Martidios and Zemargad and Mezag and Cush, and this is where it starts off. And Cush begot Nimrod, and and be, uh, and he began to be a mighty in sin and to rebel before the Lord in the earth, and he was a mighty rebel before the Lord. Therefore it is said, from the day that the world was created, there hath not been a Nimrod mighty in hunting and a rebel before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel the Great, and Haddas and Nesbin and Kedispan and the land of Pontos. From that land went forth Nimrod and reigned in Author, because he was not to be in the council of the divided generation. And he left those 4 cities, and the Lord thereupon gave him a place, and he builded 4 other cities, Nineveh and Pelatuth and Cathra and Perioth and Telzar, which was builded between Nineveh and Hadith, that is a great city. And Mizraim begat the Nevite and the Meriti and the Niviti and the Meriti and the Livki and the Pascini and the Pharisim and the Necessity and the Petality, from Winforth the Palestine and the Haphatiki. Man, there's some weird and hard to sound out. But now the Jerusalem says he was mighty in hunting and in sin before the Lord, for he was a hunter of the sons of men in their languages. And he said to them, leave the judgments of Shem and adhere to the judgments of Nimrod. On this account it is said, as Nimrod the mighty in hunting and in sin before the Lord. I thought that was pretty interesting, how he was mighty in sin. And what do we know about sin? is the transgression of the law, right?
Yep.
So is that what it means that he became like he began to be a mighty hunter, or he changed basically? Could
Yeah,
he
so
have?
so there's some really interesting languages there from, or words there that mighty hunter. A lot of people just assume when reading that, definitely from the 66 canon, that it's just talking about someone like when we think of the word hunter and what that means. And I think it's interesting, even in that context of them just being a hunter, when it says he began to, right? He began to be a mighty hunter in front of the Lord. So what does that mean?
That's
Um,
right. And
and so
Chris began.
yeah,
I'm
and I
sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, and I like how it is using like mighty in sin because we know at least what he did, to the Tower of Babel, and obviously they were doing something so much as that the father would need to intercede in that moment to not let things happen. So I think it's a very interesting word and what it means. Do you have any thoughts about it?
I've got a few, but I'll bring them up a little later on when we get through 11, because
All right.
both of these chapters to me just kind of tie in. It probably shouldn't have been divided, in my opinion. I think 10 and 11 should be just chapter 10.
No, I get it, but obviously the only reason why they were divided was for copyright reasons and stuff, like in the Catholic Church ad and all that stuff. Like I get it. There is some practicality to it to help you, you know, find verses or find thoughts within the Bible, but yeah, obviously there's kind of some, we all know that a lot of stuff has been grabbled, so um yeah, does it surprise us? Not really.
Right. And just like what you had skipped over, the Targum basically goes through a little bit of their generations as well, up to uh, chapter 11. It basically just tells about some generations.
Hmm.
No other key things that I was going to mention in 10.
Totally. Okay. Well, I'm gonna take a second and look at this word Gabor. I'm gonna share this on screen. Okay, so this is Genesis 10:8 in the Strong's lexicon. Now we come down here to this the word a mighty warrior or Gabor. Let's kind of look into that Gabor. Strong's Hebrews 1368. So strong, mighty. And it gives like a lot of, champion, great, helpers, heroes, men of outstanding. Um, we come down in the Browns and Bigs. It starts giving some more, break. One who magnifies himself, behaves proudly, a tyrant who is bold, audacious. So it gives you a little bit more comparison of what that strong and mighty word means. And an adjective, mighty in hunting. Um, and then it has a noun as a masculine. So this is a really interesting word, but we know that when it's using in this adjective, it's very interesting. So let's go look at a couple of these real quick. Like let's bring up Samuel.
Quick, that kind of adds to the story that's in my head about this a little bit too,
Uh-huh.
uh, because he was so bold and got everybody's attention, and he taught people his ways, and they loved it so much that of course he was able to become the king of the world. He was basically taking the Torah, everything in the Torah, and flipping it upside down, much like what we see today.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm going to add that to my presentation here in just a little bit too. But
Interesting.
anyway,
Well,
So go ahead, Frankie.
uh, yeah, I read in one of the, I think it was Jasher, when it talked about Nimrod, that he was a great hunter and he conquered all the lands,
Mm-hmm.
and that made him the king.
The emperor.
The emperor, yeah, that's what made him the emperor. But and he was a mighty fighter for the Lord, but then he strayed from the Lord.
I don't think it ever says for the Lord.
Yeah,
Uh,
Somewhere,
I think it's in Jasher, right? Is that the one that talks about the story of Abraham?
no, I think that's in a. I don't think that's in scripture. I think it's in a folklore book. I did see that too, though.
I'm pretty sure it was Jasher.
Mm-mm.
And when it talks about Nimrod and his conquering, and he was a mighty hunter before the Lord, and he conquered all the lands. I guess, and then it all went to his head, and then he.
Joshua does a lot about a lot about what Nimrod did, through his life. However, it doesn't say a whole lot about uh, his tower and everything. It does talk about it,
No,
but
no, no, no. It goes into Abraham's story after that.
right,
Talks about how Abraham was like Moses. He was set apart. He was supposed to be killed. Nimrod told his father to kill him, and his father took him up to the mountains and preserved him. And then he came down and he was working in the family business, making the idols. And then it tells the story of how he destroyed the idols and blamed it on the idols.
that was
And he
Abraham.
mocked Nimrod. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
Abraham. Yeah.
yes, but about Nimrod, I don't think he ever like
I think the
worked.
first couple chapters talks about the rise of Nimrod,
Right.
like how he
Yeah,
conquered and how he was a great hunter, and
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It tells how he became into power, basically.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, he came how he became emperor.
yeah, the whole world marveled after him. The whole world called him king. So he didn't
Yeah,
conquer the.
well,
He only conquered a few tribes, and just and I'm thinking maybe his teachings or his beliefs or whatever caused people to basically worship him.
well, 100%. Okay, so we've talked about this before, and I kind of want to tie it here because this is kind of leading up to to the bat tower itself. but Nimrod, or as we talked before, we know that when the fallen angel is, the Nephilim, when they die, that them and their offspring, that their spirits stay here, right, and they're unclean spirits. And so, and then we were talking about right when we came off the ship, how about how the unclean spirits were all of a sudden attacking all of his sons, and then even Sean from
Noah.
Kingdom and Context came in and was like, yeah, it also says, I think he said in Jubilees, um, sorry, that it was like kind of confirmed. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but point being is that I think that they started talking to these unclean spirits, and Nimrod, listening to them, was able to do these mighty things and was be able to, take advantage in war, through his conquest of the nations, with that information that I think he gleaned from the unclean spirits. And so I think that this is what it's talking about when he is becoming a mighty one. Um, and
Well,
which is
oh,
just to finish off, which is really interesting,
yeah,
right? Because one who would do these things and talk to these things, and then have all these people look at them, they would start magnifying themselves above others, and they would behave proudly. And we know that he was a tyrant, so that description right here, I think, is really strong. But what were you going to say, Frankie?
yeah. Well, the world that they're speaking of wasn't the world that we know today. It was a small portion of this plane
Uh,
because you got to understand it's right after the flood,
mm-hmm.
and the families broke up and spread out, and they didn't. I don't think they really spread out that far.
Hmm.
So it might have been the whole continent of where Jerusalem is in Europe in that area. You know what I mean?
Well,
I don't know if the Americas were established at that time.
well, not maybe not as a people or whatnot, but we also don't know like the geography, right? Tons of stuff could change just in the land masses, the continents, the shapes, that, like,
Right, over time. Yeah,
yeah, so
definitely.
that tons of that could have changed. But I think personally that they were probably up to some pretty high technology when it comes to the Nimrod age, not what they were previously in pre-flood. But I wonder if they didn't already have or brought back types of flight. You know what I mean? Because um, a lot of people imagine, just like for instance the Tower of Babel is just like a whole bunch of people building it with brick by brick, but we don't necessarily know that. Like, we know they were made from earth and brick, but we don't know how they were put together, type of deal. So they could have had technology of flight, and so the world to them would have been much smaller than we imagine, thinking, oh, they just would have to travel by horse, boat, or walking.
I was actually reading and then this is like mainstream stuff. It was trying to prove whether the Tower of Babel actually existed or not. But they found evidence of it, and some sort of, I forget what the name of it was, but they called it some sort of the cement, and it was stuck to the actual bricks that they found. But that's all in the Smithsonian now. That was like an article to the Smithsonian. Um,
Yeah, fear is saying that Jasher states that when Nimrod put on the garments, he became strong. So he must have found uh, some type of garments or some type of armor that was left
those were the garments that were
post flood.
uh, those were the garments that Adam left for his son and passed down. Moses, Noah brought it on the ark and was supposed to give it to Shem, but it was stolen. That's the
Ah, all right.
story. Uh, that might be for another time there.
Yeah, I've never heard anything about that, but specifically to that, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, as I was kind of saying, like, we know nowadays that there are people nowadays that talk to unclean spirits and they actually get stuff from it, right? It's not just pretend, it's real life. People are actually talking to unclean spirits and getting information. So we know, or at least I believe that the way that the people are doing that same behavior now is similar to whatever Nimrod did, and I think that that's because Nimrod is maybe one of the, or if not the, like, creator of that type of behavior. Now, not to say it didn't exist before, but it seemed like he kind of capitalized on it, kind of copyrighted it to him, and then started conquering the world with it. So when you were saying, like, maybe he found some armor, or some other relics from the pre-flood era and used those, I totally get that. I totally think that they have probably found today relics within archaeological finds that they don't share with us, and these
Well,
are
it's
relics that
kind
could
of funny
contain tons
too.
of powder.
That's kind of what Austin brought up yesterday in his video, that they took uh, something that they created in the 1800s and that they just patented it in 2004 so that they could get the rights to it. They copyrighted it. So that they have all this technology. They're just bringing it out. They're rolling it out slowly. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Austin kind of
No,
exposed that yesterday in his video.
I think it's in our face everywhere we look. Everywhere.
A lot of it.
Well,
I
to
think
to
most
those that are
patent
awake,
stuff.
yeah, but to those that are asleep, they don't see anything. So it's not
Okay.
in,
Yeah,
it's
but
not
I
out in the
think they have
open to
all
those
kinds of
sleeping.
technology. I
Yeah,
think they have all kinds of technology that they're just, slow rolling in. You know what I mean?
I don't think they're slow rolling anything. I think it's point blank in our face, boom, everywhere you
Yeah,
look.
I don't. Oh, yeah. What I'm saying, Anthony, is I don't mean all of it is blank. They're slow rolling it in. They're coming up with one thing after another. Like we just found out last week with the what was it, the hovercraft technology. They've had that in the back burner for years, and now they're slow rolling that in. You know what I mean? It's like when they upgrade our phones, that they have the best available, but they just give it to us in little increments so that they can sell more and sell more.
When is the
Like
last you updated your phone and it became better
it always becomes slower.
and worse? Look,
Yeah.
look at the well. Actually, before I mention about the buildings and stuff like that, I think maybe we should get through Genesis 11, just a reading of it at least. What do
Oh
you
yeah.
think?
Well, we'll get there. We still got some time. But yeah, all I wanted to sum up with what I was saying is he definitely was talking to unclean spirits. He was definitely doing so and um, was getting was getting sustenance from it, right? So he was getting armor, he was getting, knowledge, he was getting whatever it was, and he eventually, was able to conquer the whole world and make everything one language. So whatever he was doing, right, he was very successful at it. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and move on to Genesis 11. Pull this up. And oops, one more. Genesis 10. There we go. Oops. It's because I'm in the wrong one. There we go. Genesis 11. Perfect. All right. So I'm showing it on the screen now. Okay. So I'll go ahead and just read this, and then we'll go back and talk about it. So it says, Genesis 11, and the whole world was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said to one another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad from the face of the earth. And the Lord came down to the city and the tower where the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they began to do, and nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore it is the name of it is called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Aphorax 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he begot Aphorax 500 years and begot sons and daughters. And Aphrad lived 5 and 30 years and begat Shalon. And Apex lived, and after he begat Shalon 403 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Shalon lived 30 years, and begat Eber. And Eber lived after he begot Eber, and Shelah lived after he begot Eber for 103 years, 403 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Eber lived 430 years, and begot Peleg. And Eber lived after he begat Peleg for 430 years and begot sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years and begot Reu. And Peleg lived after he begot Re 209 years and begot sons and daughters. And Re lived 230 years and begot Serug. And Reu lived after he begot Serug 207 years and begot sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years and begot Naor. And Serug lived after he begat Nor 200 years and begot sons and daughters. And Nor lived 9 and 20 years and begot Tahar. And Nor lived after he begot Tahar 190 years and begot sons and daughters. And Tahar lived 70 years and begot Abram, Nohar, and Ranan. And these are the generations of Tanah. Tanah begot Abram, Nohar, Aran, and Aran begot Lot. And Aran died before his father Tion in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Shandes. And Abram and Nor took them wives, and the name of Abram's wife was Sarah, and the name of Nor's wife was Michai, the daughter of Haran, the father of Michai, and the father of Ishka. But Sarar was barren, she had no child. And Tian took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, and his son's son, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Tanan were 205 years, and Tanan died in Haran. Whew, that was a lot of repeating myself, but all right, what do you guys think?
Well, I don't think I'm going to try to read that in the Targum. However, I've done read that particular chapter in the Targum probably 15 times, and I can't find anything or hardly anything that goes against what was read in the King James. However, it doesn't have as much information as the King James Genesis does.
Mm.
However, I do want to read from Jubilees a little bit, if that's okay.
Sure.
The best I can do, I guess, is starting in chapter 10, verse 18. It says is, and in hang on one second. All right. And in the 33rd Jubilee, in the first year, in the second week, Peleg took himself a woman whose name was Lamna, the daughter of Shinar. And she bore him a son in the 4th year of this week, and he called his name Reu, for he says, Behold, the children of men have become evil through the wicked purpose of building for themselves a city and a tower in the land of Shinar. For they departed from the land of Ararat eastward to Shinar. For in his days they built the city and the tower, saying, Go to, let us ascend thereby into heaven. And they began to build, and in the 4th week they made brick with fire, and the bricks served them for stone, and the clay with which they cemented them together was asphalt, which comes out of the sea and out of the fountains of the water in the land of Shinar. And they built it. 43 years were they building it. Its breadth was 203 bricks, and the height of it, the height of a brick was the third of one. Its height amounted to 5,430 33 cubits and 2 palms, and the extent of one wall was 13 stades, and of the other 30 stades. And Yahuwah Elohim said unto us, Behold, they are one people, and this they began to do. And now nothing will be withheld from them. Go to, let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech, and that they may be dispersed into the cities and nations, and one purpose will no longer abide with them till the day of judgment. And Yahuwah descended, and we descended with him to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built. And he confounded their language, and they no longer understood one another's speech. And they ceased then to build the city and the tower. For this reason, the whole land of Shinar is called Babel, because Yahuwah did there confound all the language of the children of men. And from thence they were dispersed into their cities, each according to his language and his nation. And Yahuwah sent a mighty wind against the tower and overthrew it upon the earth. And behold, it was between Asher and Babel in the land of Shinar, and they called its name Overthrow. In the 4th week, in the 1st year, in the beginning thereof, in the 34th Jubilee, were there dispersed from the land of Shinar. And Shem and his sons went into the land which he was to occupy, which he acquired as his portion in the land of the south. And Kenan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Mitzrayim, that it was very good. And he went into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is, lost my place. Sorry. Actually, I'm going to stop there.
Okay. So, what kind of spoke out about that for you?
Uh, they it tells how basically the size of the tower. Now, as far as the measurements go, I'm not good enough to tell anybody in like today's measurements or anything, but it sounds like it was pretty big because it reached all the way to heaven, right? Um,
I
anyway,
actually, I was just to quickly stop you real quick. I was thinking about that. I was looking at the measurements of the New Jerusalem, and then I was wondering, like, I wonder if that was kind of Nimrod's thing with it, is like he wanted to create this, you know, kind like his own temple, but the great temple, like type of idea in his head. And I just wonder, like, do you think the tower was like, you know, as tall as, 1,500 miles tall? Because we don't know, like, for instance, like in the image that we have in the table, like, we really don't know how high the dome is. So that makes me think, like, did he have to, like, was the point of the tower to get all the way to the top where he could be like, you know, them working right under the firmament? Or was it more to get high enough to maybe to get into some of those, like the Jacob's ladders type of things? So I really wonder if it I definitely think it was about height, but do you think it was so much as height that he was actually, like, kind of like the Disney logo indicates, that he was able to, or they would have been able to break through? What are your thoughts about that, guys?
there there is something that talks about how they shot arrows up every day, and I can't remember exactly where that's at. But they was shooting arrows up. It took them a year to climb to the top of it. Like if they dropped a brick, they all mourned. But if somebody fell off the tower, it was nothing to it.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. But
but but
but even if
but
it
they
was a mile, right? Like, I don't know. That's where I'm kind of just interrupt you. That's where I'm kind of thinking, like, if they had to drag each rock up, like on a cart going up, well, like, that would be horrible. So do you think do you think it was more like less technology back then? I don't know. What are your thoughts? And keep going. Sorry.
honestly, I think it was more technological. Also, I think the people were a lot larger too. Um, you know, somebody could that was 50 feet tall could carry a car around like it wasn't nothing, right? So if the brakes were the size of a Ford pickup or something, they could just pick up one and go with it. You know, just my opinion. But anyway, what stood out to me in Jubilees was that the it was actually the destruction of the tower. It says that the wind blew and toppled it over, basically, right? Uh, the King James doesn't mention any destruction of the tower. It just says it confounds their languages and they disperse, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah, but it's obviously not here, so we know that something happened to it.
That's my point. That's my point. Um, Now, if you'd like, I could kind of get into the details of uh, what I had to present. Um, we've all heard of this so-called mud flood, right? Where all these elaborate buildings are buried under some sort of a worldly disaster, mud flood type thing, right?
Totally.
Am I roboting or anything?
No, no, no. I just had myself muted and I started talking without unmuting myself.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, so, and I kind of like, so what I like, I definitely want to get into the tower, for sure. And then just to everyone real quick, like, this is going to be a multi-part series because there's just so much stuff to specifically pick out with a Nimrod, that we kind of want to get that all done, because to a lot of us, that this character is something that's very important, in the grand scheme of the story. And so I kind of want to spend time on him to develop. Now, so let's even take a step back from the tower. The tower hasn't built yet. We know that he comes from the line and he starts progressing. He becomes a mighty one, and he gets all the way to the point where we know that the Tower of Babel, right? That Babel is his city. We it tells us that in Scripture. Okay, so it's Nimrod's city. Well, how did he get to the point where the whole earth spoke one language? Okay, no, so this is an interesting thought to me, real quick, guys. Now,
Wait a minute. Wait.
okay, go ahead.
The whole earth would have spoke one language anyway, because it was only Noah and his family left. I highly doubt that, his three sons spoke a different language than Noah.
Yeah, I didn't say that, but I did want to make a point real quick. Was that and it says and the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one, and and they have all one language." So this is kind of interesting to me because I've always thought like interesting, like they all spoke Hebrew or the first language, um, and that's just because like what everyone spoke. But it's kind of interesting here because in 11:6 it says, "And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language." He is saying he's making a statement that if they already speak all one language, isn't that kind of redundant?
Well, yeah, but I was thinking you were saying that let's see how they all spoke one language to begin with. Okay, I
No,
see where you get.
no, it says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. But then you go down to 6, and and it says, the Lord said, Behold, the people is one. They are of all one language. Why would he make a statement of something that's already true? It's not like he came and said, and Lord said, Behold, the grass is green and the skies are blue.
Because he wasn't going to destroy the people that were building the tower with a worldwide uh, destruction like the flood of Noah was, because they weren't doing as bad of things as what the people before the flood had done.
I'm not even talking about actions. I'm just specifically talking here about the one language. Why would he come down and say, "Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language"? Like this is just like a random thing in my head. Like I can't. So it doesn't. I guess it really doesn't matter because whether they spoke one language or two languages or whatever, when he comes down, he says that. I just think it's interesting that he points that specific thing out when it states in the very beginning of the chapter, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. So I don't know, just an interesting thought, but we can totally move away from there. Does anyone else have like thoughts about that of why, like,
Well,
Yeah,
well,
I wasn't quite finished with my
okay,
statement.
yeah, of course, go ahead.
Um, he made known that it was all of one language, and he changed the language. Right? Could you think of a better way to basically destroy evil than to just make people not understand each other?
I don't
See,
think you're getting me, brother, but go ahead.
well, maybe I'm not.
Yeah, no, I am not saying that the language wasn't good to split. If you open up your Bible to Genesis 11, it says the first chapter, Genesis 11:1, it says the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And then if you jump down to 6, it says, and the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. My question to y'all is why would the Father state that the language was one if it was already all one language?
And yeah, like I say, I think to make the following statement, I think he wanted to alliterate that everybody spoke as one language, and then to go to the next. That's how I look at it.
I think that Vader is trying to say that he's Captain Obvious. He's pointing out the obvious. We all knew there was one language anyway. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like he already like
Yeah,
it already.
why would he point out the obvious? But I think behind the obvious, they all had one language, but they were all of one thought. They all had one goal in mind, and I think that's what he means by they were all of one
Well,
language.
no, because it
They
literally
all had
it
one thought
it's
process. They all had one desire.
it already
They
states
were
that
all
though.
unified in one goal. You know
So
what I mean?
so that's like stating it twice because he says, "And the Lord said, Behold, the people are one." That is, they have one thought, they have one goal, they're all
Right.
together, and they have one language. That right there makes me think that, like, as you were kind of talking about, like the spirit, they all have the same goal. Is over this time of what Nimrod did, is he actually got the people to be one and to speak that one language.
Ah. Oh, so you're saying maybe he declared one language
Ye-
and said, instead of any other language, we're going to only speak this language.
Yep. Yep.
And then the Father came down and babbled them and
Did exactly what
commanded
they
them
were
to speak
trying.
different languages.
Exactly, because if you go back up to 4, it says, And they said, Go to, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad the face of the whole earth. So they knew that that they were going to be spread apart. So they made one language, and I think this is the language of symbols. I think this is where we get our symbology, i.e., Freemasonry, etc., from. Is this language that they're talking about? Is a um, I don't think this is them all speaking Hebrew and they all speak Hebrew until the Tower of Babel, and then all these other random ones come. Not to say that Hebrew or Adam didn't speak it and they didn't speak it, but I think there was, because of the spreading out of people, there were definitely different languages that popped out, right? Like that makes sense to me.
From
Yeah,
Noah?
but he
Like a
commanded
law.
it to be a
Hmm.
law of one language, only one language,
Which
and then
is
you would be persecuted if you spoke a different language or had a different thought.
exactly what the no, sorry, Dead Sea Scrolls, the Georgia Guidestone says. Let's make us a new living language.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's speaking in all those different languages, but it's saying let us all come together and make a new
One
living
express.
language.
Yes.
That's what I think is happening here. I don't think everyone always spoke one language, even after, like even after Adam. Like I think it's the language has developed,
No,
and
the language would be
dialect
a
and
philosophy.
I
So
don't.
you're
Where
saying that Vader, you're saying the language would be a philosophy,
well, I think it is
Levi.
because it's the languages of
Because that
symbols.
Georgia Guidestone, one language would be one philosophy for life, and that's what they're trying to create.
Totally. Which is this
And
almost
everyone
the same
speaks in that.
which is almost the same thing as that saying the people is one. What were you going to say, Anthony?
Yeah, what were you gonna say, Anthony?
I was basically asking about how did people speak in pictographs? If that was the language of the day, how did they speak it? I can understand how they wrote it or something like that, but how did they speak it?
Well, can't you say that exact same thing about Chinese?
There
Since you
had
don't
to be
speak Chinese?
there had to been a spoken language, and I think all the way from Noah's day after the flood that I'm sure Noah, his wife, and his three sons and their wives all spoke the same language. So where did they start to learn other languages? Now we did hear about the cave of
Learn languages? Because
we
my whole thought, like, people have created languages. Like, the English language is a creation of people that
but
take
it
certain vowels and letters and consonants, put them together, and all agree that it means this certain thing. So, in the same way, you could look at the Chinese pictographs and be like, okay, like, I can see the symbols, they can write these, but how could you possibly ever say these? Well, they did. That's how language works.
Yeah, but one philosophy goes beyond language, though.
No, no, but see, this is my
You
thing.
can speak a different you can speak a different language and have one philosophy, though.
Well, here
You know
let
what I mean?
let
One
let
meaning of life, one religion, and that's what they're one new world order,
totally.
one new. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a philosophy
Mhm.
that Yah was breaking up their philosophy, their belief system, because it was getting away from the belief system of Torah or,
The father,
of what was
totally.
handed down from the father to Adam and to all his descendants, Noah,
Yeah.
Enoch,
I mean,
Shem.
I
So,
don't even.
so their philosophy was the philosophy of what we're having right now. This one world government, this one world order, one religion, one everything. It's the same thing as they had back then, a philosophy. It's a pretty good point, Vader.
Yeah, and I think that, well, and even more so, like with your kind of say with the philosophy, like the language is the philosophy. Because if you've done any
Yes.
type of research into, like, for instance, Freemasonry, each symbol has
Mm-hmm.
so many different meanings, and if you put certain
Yeah.
symbols together, that means something different if you put other symbols together. So it
Well,
totally
that's
is
how
a
they talk through
language.
emails.
That's how they talk through media. That's how they talk through the
Yeah, media,
all of it.
email.
Yep.
They're spreading their message one to one another because they have that language in common, that philosophy in common.
Exactly. So when they see a picture, they know exactly what that means. And so, to kind of
Yeah.
answer your question real quick, Anthony, I'll give you an example like this. If you go from New York to Texas, those people speak the base same language, but they also speak a different language. So just
Call it
in just okay, yeah, go ahead.
language of itself. That's called an accent. That's not a language of itself. However, uh,
So if you go to if you go to New York and you say I'm fixin', they don't their word for fixin' is not the same word as your word for fixin'. So
yeah,
yeah,
because
they
they
share
know
commonalities.
jack
Go ahead.
when they speak, a car on a jack doesn't come out their mouth. A word, a language, a sound comes out of their mouth, not a picture. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
If I'm in a bind trying to hold up a brick and I just put the cement on it, I'm asking you for the next brick, and you hand me a shovel to put more concrete on or something, and we get in an argument, and we can't understand what each other's thinking. I'm eventually going to take the brick and throw it at you, and you're going to throw the shovel at me.
I don't get the point, but
I'm saying that's how it was dispersed. That's why people quit building the tower, is because nobody could understand each other.
no, I think you're I think we'll just move on because I literally think you're like arguing on a subject that no one is bringing up. So I think there's just some miscommunication, but no worries,
But
we can move on.
you're saying language was a pictograph. That I'm saying that you say Nimrod brought to the people together with one language, and that was his language basically. Like he had changed the language from what everybody spoke, and in a pictograph form, and that's basically what we have today. And everywhere we look, basically, like in Washington D.C. or something like that, it's Masonic stuff everywhere, and that derived from Nimrod's language, so to speak, right?
Yeah, I'm saying that, but you're getting caught up, I feel like, in the speech part. Like, how can a symbol be?
It's an agenda. It's one agenda. Their agenda is to rule the world, and that's what his agenda was in Babel, was to rule the world.
I don't
One
know if it's a
agenda,
gender.
one philosophy,
I
one
think,
language, everyone common in one goal to exalt themselves above Yah.
but that's the point. They were already at that point. He was already king of the world, ruler of the entire world, right?
So they got off the boat and he was instantly the ruler of the world?
He wanted to rule heaven as well. He wanted to take over heaven and kill God and put his false idols in his place, so the people would worship those idols and
Okay.
him God.
Yeah, for
Just
sure.
like the devil, what the devil wants.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think he like that's his supreme commander is literally the devil. I think he is, as I said in the description of the title, he's the evil one's most special of the specialist boys. Because he hears his God and he knows his ways. And so um kind of going back to that where he's proud and boastful and a tyrant, well, that also sounds like his father, right?
Well, there's nothing new under the sun. So these special boys are just repeating what was done centuries ago. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and they're always trying to like be the special boy to cause events in,
Yeah.
the Bible to come true for sure. Um, yeah, we can move over from the language thing. I just think it was really interesting that it pointed it out. It seems kind of odd that it would point it out and then just everyone assume it. So that was just some thoughts there. But we read the rest of 11. Um, and so obviously the next one would be about Abraham. So we're gonna kind of skip Abraham for a little bit, even though he was, at least from my research, a contemporary with Nimrod. He moved out of Nimrod's in his forefathers' area of Ur back to the area which would be in the promise. Which is the promise, the same area that the New Jerusalem will take up, and he headed out to Canaan, and so
We're
go
get a
ahead.
lot more. I was going to just add, reiterate that we're going to definitely get into more about Abraham in the coming chapters for
Oh, for
sure.
sure, yeah, Abraham's super important. I just want to kind of build up the bad guy of it so that we can end with the good end of it. And so, but so yeah, I kind of like to next week. Kind of what my plan is to talk about is I want to bring up. So we to this week we looked into the secular. Sorry, into the sorry. We looked into scripture about Nimrod. And there's more out there in extra, the apocryphal books. But next week, I want to look into the secular information about Nimrod and see what we can't pull up because there's actually quite a bit out there, and it's been and some of this information's been shown before, but I think we'll definitely add some new gravy to the mix. So I'm excited about that. So I don't want to get too much into his connections with others. But I'd still like to, since we kind of have gone through it, did you said you have a presentation that you kind of wanted to have?
Yeah, and I ain't waiting until next week.
Oh, totally.
Like weeks, man.
Oh, no, yeah. I get it, bro. But we do only have so much time. Do you think it's gonna take you? How long do you think it'll take you?
Shouldn't take me too long to run through it, but I'm sure there's going
Okay.
to be questions about it. But I definitely want to get through it like in this show, so if there are questions about it, we can address them, as they come in or something like that. If that's cool. Um, but yeah, if y'all want me to jump into it, I'll kind of show y'all what I've come across, and
Go ahead. I'm down.
um, I'm just kind of putting most of this in my own words. I just got some notes here. I'm gonna try to follow. But we've all heard of this mud flood thing, right? How all the buildings were buried under sediment and stuff like that. Something apparently happened to cause that. Correct?
Totally.
All right. Now, Vader Bear, I know you and I are going to differ a little bit on opinions here, but personally, I think that the buildings that are in question are like the White House, these different Capitol buildings throughout America and the world. Um, when were they built? How were they built? We can't rebuild them today. I know a lot of people's done looked through the mud flood stuff and the Tartaria and stuff like that, right? I have an opinion, and also it was confirmed by a sort of a vision / voice as to what caused that. I know a lot of people say that something happened in 70 AD, and Nero is Nimrod and all this stuff, but I don't really want to get into that particular portion of it. Um, we know that the world wasn't destroyed in 70 AD and the kingdom's not here. We're not gods. Anyway, I did read the Jubilee section earlier about the wind blowing the tower over, right? Now I'd like to read a little bit in the book of Joshua, and this is chapter 9, verse 38. Last chapter last verse in chapter 9 in the book of Joshua. It says, "And as to the tower which the sons of men built, the earth opened his mouth and swallowed up 1/3 part thereof. And a fire also descended from heaven and burned another third, and the other third is left to this day, and it is of that part which was aloft, and its circumference is 3 days' walk. And many of the sons of men died in that tower, a people without number." That tells me that the earth opened up and swallowed up 1/3 of it. The first thing in my mind goes to, it must have been an earthquake, or whatever swallowed up that tower must have caused the earth to quake. That could be a possibility as to why the White House and Capitol buildings and all these elaborate structures have been found buried in the earth. However, that's not my only idea. Jubilees talks about the wind blowing the tower over. Okay. I'm going to have to get back to Jubilees. I kind of lost my thought for just a second, but it says, "For this reason, the whole land of Shinar is called Babel," because where was I at here? And yes, it was.
What's up?
Jubilees 10:26, and I'm trying. Okay, and Yahuwah sent a mighty wind against the tower and overthrew it upon the earth. And behold, it was between Asher and Babel in the land of Shinar, and they called its name Overthrow. Now, the book of Jubilees says it was thrown over. Now, can you imagine a tower that large, that high, being overthrown, falling to the earth? That could cause an earthquake, could cause the buildings to sink, basically. The legend of the Jews also says that it sank in the ground. Not going to really get into the legends of the Jews. I don't have that where I can read it. So whoever the sibling oracles, and I've never read it, never even heard of it. It says Yah overturned the tower with a great wind. There's something in the antiquity of the Jews that I'd like to read about the destruction of the tower. It says, "When all men were of one language, some of them built a high tower, as if they would thereby ascend up to heaven. But the gods sent storms of wind and overthrew the tower and gave everyone a peculiar language. And for this reason, it was that the city was called Babylon." The antiquity of the Jews, Josephus, I think, says that it was a wind that blew it over, right? Now, I don't remember exactly where I read it, but somewhere it says that a portion of the tower turned to dust when it was destroyed. A portion turned to dust. Well, no, for a portion was disintegrated, basically, and 1/3 of it was turned to dust, and the other 2/3 was blown over. Now, if you can imagine 1/3 of that tower being turned to dust, and then that wind coming, that could have blown so much dust around the entire earth that it could have covered everything in feet of dirt and sediment, whatever. Just add a little rain. Guess what? You got mud. Uh,
To-
anyway, I
Totally, and I did pull this up for you as you were talking. This is the Josephus Antiquity of the Jews, and then this last thing. There's actually some really interesting things in here, real quick, that I want to point out as well. But the part he was mentioning was this, and it says, "When all men were of one language, some of them built a high tower, as if they were thereby ascend up to heaven." But the gods sent storms of wind and overthrew the tower, and gave everyone a particular language, and for this reason it was this city that was called Babylon. But
Yep.
I saw this part while I was reading, and this blew my mind. I just wanted to share y'all real quick. This is insane. Let me find it real quick. Where was that? I think it was like right. And let me go like this. Let me see. Give me 1 second, guys. Oh, right here, and it said this is the Greek apocalypse of Baruch. It says, and those who gave counsel to build the tower, for they whom they seeth drove forth multitudes of both men and women to make bricks, among whom a woman making brick was not allowed to be released in the hour of childbirth, but brought forth while she was making bricks, and carried her child in her apron, and continued to make bricks. That sounds like a tyrant to me, guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's in Baruch. Um, I think it's Second Baruch or something that talks about that. But I didn't look that one up. I'm glad you brought that point up.
Yeah, well, just like I was reading, like as you were going through it, I was trying to find what you had shown me earlier, and I just read that, and I was like, that's insane, man. Can you imagine that? Like, they obviously were not doing that by choice.
Tell me that ain't some Stockholm syndrome, though, man. Somebody that is going through something like this. This woman that was building brick and continued to build brick after she done had a baby and still worship the guy.
Yeah, no, for
Tell me,
sure. I don't know. Well, this interesting just to kind of to I don't know if they necessarily worship him because it says, "For they whom those seeth drove forth multitudes." So that's this drove forth is under the fear of death.
right? They were in slavery
Uh,
and they learned loved it, or they just that's what they wanted. It's
I can't. I don't know if that's a true statement. I don't know if you can judge what each person wanted, but there were obviously those that were all about this guy and doing his thing and building his tower. Some people may have just been born into it and they had no other choice. Like that baby born and mom continued working. As soon as he was able to work, I bet you he was working too. So
absolutely.
that's
I went
insane.
I went to work when I was 14 years old because I thought I had to. I was always told my whole life, well, you got to get a job, you got to get paid, you got to pay bills. What if I don't want to pay bills? What if I don't want a job? I'm still a slave to that nature. I still have to get a job and I still have to pay my bills if I want the power and water and stuff like that, right? So we're a slave to the same society as what these folks were in the society of whatever took place in the land of Shinar in Babylon these days. Which it wasn't
To a
called Babylon.
lesser degree, but yeah. Meaning like we have it way better than they had it then, for sure. Like, and what I mean by that is like no one is forcing my wife to have a child while she works and keep the child while she's working until she's done. And then she
But
gets to home and tend to the child. Like that doesn't happen
okay,
nowadays.
but look how many people want to hurry up and get the child born so they can get back to work.
No, I get you. I'm not like we could we could literally sit here and nitpick any type of behavior and any type of people. I'm just saying specifically to the degree, right? Like for instance, like I agree we're still in a form of slavery, but we don't have people behind us whipping us and telling us and beating us get what I mean? Like they can't. That type of open behavior isn't like people wouldn't allow it, so they have to try different tactics, through entertainment and the news, etc., to coax us to go their way. But I still feel like we have it way better than they did, at least as it's described, of the workers for those who made the tower, at least.
Possibly. I'll agree with you to an extent. But the whole point I'm trying to get at is these people wanted to do this. It's not that they felt driven to do it. They did it out of will. They wanted to get up there and do as Nimrod wanted them to do, basically.
Hmm. I don't think you could prove that. I don't think you
Well,
could prove that
they
intention in
all,
people's hearts.
and same as today, all the people in the world don't have the love of money like some do.
Hmm. Oh,
Um,
for sure.
okay, that's the drive today. We're a slave to the dollar. I say
You
we.
are?
Talking about in general. I'm talking
Oh,
about
okay.
in are enslaved to the dollar bill. They think they have to get up and go to work every day to make that almighty dollar so they can come home and give it to somebody that, like the electric bill. Okay, we're giving people money. In turn, they're giving us free energy. And what energy we use, we just turn around and send it right back to them. It's called a neutral. It's a neutral line. But anyway, I think we're enslaved today, much like that they were in the days of Nimrod. Maybe not all exactly. It's they probably learned their lesson and
Well,
did something.
yeah, there's
Uh,
nothing new under the sun for sure. I'm just talking about the severity of degrees, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I get it, and I'm in agreement with you on this. I think we might see it a little differently, is all. But anyway, back to if and let Frank, if you have any questions so far, or anybody else, but just wanted to kind of point out that uh, the destruction of the Tower of Babel was not only in these extra biblical texts. It's always like it's also like first account knowledge and visual knowledge of people seeing it. And like I said, just before the show, I read that article where there's a tablet. It was broken in half, but when they put it together, they had a visual as to what the Tower of Babel looked like. Now, I haven't looked into that much, because like I said, that was right before the show when I ran across that.
Yeah, I hear.
Um,
I have this picture up here. It's a guy standing there, and it shows you kind of the outlay of the like of it from a distance, and then kind of shows you like the top down of how it worked. Um, which is very interesting. Now this is apparently the earliest drawing of the Tower of Babel that was found. And it's interesting, kind of the shape that they gave it, and the proportions that they gave it, right? Because let's kind of just think about this real quick. It said that the bottom, to walk around the bottom, it would take 3 days, right?
yeah, we actually read that just a little bit ago, and I
Totally.
think
Hmm. So if it took you 3 days to walk around, like let's literally do.
no, by walk by. I think it's talking about just one side or something of it, like not walk all the way around it.
I thought it said. I'll read it again. Yeah, and its circumference is 3 days walk.
Okay, all right.
It literally says, and the other third is left to this day, and it is of what the part which was aloft, the circumference is 3 days walk.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I
So
missed.
like how long, like, or how fast does a person walk? How fast? I'm literally gonna Google this. I'll get rid of my screen for you real quick, guys. I'm literally how fast does a human walk in miles per hour? 3 to 4 miles per hour.
I'm gonna say 3, but that was gonna be a guess.
Okay, so let's just say 3 miles per hour. And if we just make it as simple as possible, we can say that they walk for all 3 days, like for all 24 hours, right? So it'd be 24 times 3 and a day average. So you're 60 miles. Okay, so if around 60 to 70 miles, let's just say, at the base. So if it's 60, 70 miles at the base,
Even if it's 30 miles at the base.
no, so I'm pulling it back up because I want to kind of show with. Let me pull that picture back up. Give me 1 second, everyone. Oops, let's go back.
Just imagine the Eiffel Tower, or what's the largest building in the world?
It's like the one in Dubai, but I brought this picture back up real quick before you get into that. So this base part would take three three days to walk around, and you're traveling 20 miles per day, so it's around 60 miles around.
Well, when the towers came down, you remember all the dust and soot that created,
That's
and
what.
they were nowhere near the size of this. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah, no, totally. And see, that's what we're kind of saying with the Tower of Babel, that when it came down, and as it was saying, like in the book, I think it was Jasher, that a third of it was swallowed up, a third of it. Oh, okay, so I say this wrong. Oh, wow, guys. When I reread this, listen to this. It says, "And as to the tower which the sons of men built, the earth opened up and swallowed a third part of it." Okay, so what is the third part that it swallowed?
Okay.
Well, just hear out me. Like, just answer a simple question. What part of the tower did the earth swallow?
I would say the lower half,
Right?
or the lower
Exactly. And then the middle half was destroyed by fire, right? And
third.
then
Yeah.
the third part, which was what, and it says that, and this is the part which was aloft, this was the part that was in the air. When it came down, that created an area that was took 3 days to walk around. So the base actually had to be bigger than the 3 day walk. Because the base would obviously have to be bigger than the top of the tower.
Absolutely.
So that's just really interesting because that doesn't even give us the base circumference of the tower.
Mm-mm.
That's just the stones that fell from the top and fell down. But to kind of go back a little bit before I got into that, that's what he was kind of saying, Frankie, is that the ones that got sucked in the earth, something had to happen for those, like all that weight to be sucked into the earth. One, two, the fire that destroyed a third part of it. Well, that makes me think, what happens if bricks get destroyed by fire? Well, they turn into dust. And then you have a third part of the things falling from as high as they were all the way to down to the ground, and then obviously hitting the ground. So that amount of force, that amount of dust, could totally be why we see the liquefaction, or you could say something happened that caused the liquefaction. That's why a third of the earth fell down, and then the dust, the extra mud that covered everything else, that came from the third of the parts that were destroyed by fire. and then the force of the rocks that were in the air hitting the ground, well, that could cause like tornadoes. That could cause earthquakes in itself, and even liquefaction in itself, something so big hitting the ground, and definitely a whole bunch of them. So, and to kind of back up his point, as I've said many times,
I hadn't
uh,
even got to the point yet.
well, I know. You said, like I've said many times, like the buildings in the areas that we all see now. The White House, like we have construction pictures of it. So like that, that's a questionable one to me. But there are some out there where they don't have, imagery of it being in construction, and the buildings are very sophisticated, as Ewar kind of showed, and how they're very, very reminiscent of like electronical components. And I wouldn't even deny that, but what I would say is those type of places, I don't see the use for as good wholesome things. Meaning, those buildings, like a cathedral, was constructed to physically trick people through vibrations and sounds, and frequencies, to having spiritual experiences, that were physical experiences. And I believe this was part of the information that Nimrod received from the unclean spirits in how to do this type of stuff to people. But I'll let you can kind of continue on there from there, Anthony.
Well, we kind of did jump a little ahead, but that's okay. As far as I kind of got to go back a little bit about the size. I was asking about the tower in Dubai. What's its base circumference? A city block? 4 city blocks? It's definitely not 30 miles or 60 miles. That would be roughly the entire city.
Yeah, and
But
we already figured out that 60 miles was just the loft part. That wasn't even actually the base. But go ahead.
right. Also, oh shoot, um, the other cities. It said that that the Tower of Babel was just the tower of one city, and it was between two cities. Um, that was only the tower. So, in other words, Nimrod had other cities. It only names a few.
Oh,
But
for sure, he
however,
was the emperor of the world.
right now this is this is actually after the fall of the Tower of Babel, but we have different translations and languages and stuff throughout the world that also mention in their own writings about the destruction of the tower, like the Sumerians and the Syrians. They had a parallel story. The Samaria called in Merkar and the Lord of Arata. That was supposedly written in the 21st century BC, and Arata is an unnamed king or land that appears in the story. An unnamed king. Now, we call him Nimrod, but when the language was changed, he had 72 names. Everybody knew who he was, but they all called him his name in their language. You see what I mean?
I think everyone believes that.
Okay. Well, the Assyrian, and let's see, 911 to 605 BC has some story written in the 8th century. I just made this a note. Okay. I'm just kind of going off my note, but the Syrians had a similar story. But what kind of got my attention to it, Native Americans, like actual, like Mexico, Cherokee, and this one says the Tohono O'odham people say that Montezuma escaped a great flood, then became wicked and attempted to build a great house reaching to heaven, but the Great Spirit destroyed it with thunderbolts. That one kind of hit home with me, and this is on Wikipedia, so anybody can look this up. It's under the Native American part, but that one kind of went aligned with the tower being destroyed by wind and fire and sinking in the ground, all this stuff, right? It just really went in line. There's also a book by James George Frazier, Folklore in the Old Testament, written in 1918. States that the Karen people of Myanmar show clear Abrahamic influence, and that they migrated to the land of Karenni, which is Burma, 30 generations after Adam, when the languages were confused. This is sort of mainstream and trying to disprove what Scripture says about it. However, they had basically the same story. Let's see, I read that. But anyway, I wanted to get to the cities. Nimrod was the king of the world. And I know a lot of people say, well, the whole world was the land of Shinar at that time. And I disagree with that simply because of the Native American, what they say about it. Okay. It was also found in Mexico and in the Cherokee language, which I'm not going to look it up. You can look it up for yourself on Wikipedia. But if I did that right now and read it, it would mess up my internet connection. But these cities, when this tower was blown over or sunk in the ground or turned to fire, burned with fire, turned to dust, blown by a wind, all that with a tower that size, just a tower, it makes sense to me now that it could have caused a worldwide catastrophe, like a ripple effect. What if all the towers sunk a third into the ground? All the buildings, all the cities, everything that Nimrod had sunk a third in the ground, and were destroyed.
Right, and then we have all these imagery of all these people coming to these places that are half, a third buried into the ground, and then just start building there. Um,
Claim they were built 1800s and
to,
1900s.
yeah, for sure, and I know that, and I don't. Now, some of them I will say like probably were, and I know that like cathedrals and stuff today, like people say we can't build that type of stuff. Like we totally can build that type of stuff. However, it does make it seem way less likely, at least from our perspective on like technology and history, because we think back, let's say 120 years ago, like the horses were horse and buggy were the number one mode of transportation on land, and boats were the like the only alternative. Um, so maybe a little bit more of that, but well, my
No,
point.
I believe that they had flying machines. I mean, they're depicted around
Yeah,
the world.
I know, bro. I'm not specifically talking about that. I'm talking about something else. So just bear with me for just a minute. So
Sorry.
no worries. So what I'm saying is like if we go back 102 years, that's all they had, right? Um, and so I think we naturally assume, well, like if 200 years ago they had horse and buggy, well then, 1,000 years ago, or like at least 3,000 years ago, they had to have way less than horse and buggy. And so I say that obviously knowing that that's wrong and not agreeing with that the way that is, but I just think it's interesting because um, the people that we see in these pictures that Ewar showed that are digging down into buildings, to me the conflict I have in my head with that, necessarily all of it, like let's say specifically San Francisco, is I think that these images that we saw, there's not a lot of context to them. So what I mean is, like, there's pictures and there's no one in the pictures. Well, does that mean that that's because there's no one out? Or was it because they all were minors and they're all like there could be multiple reasons why you could take a picture and no one there. You can even go into like a downtown on a of a like a busy thing on a Tuesday and find streets where no one's at. So all I'm trying to say is it is kind of interesting because at least like the San Francisco stuff, that is not old enough unless people just got there, like you're saying, that city was there during the time of Nimrod, which I could totally see, and that it was buried during the Tower of Babel, which I could totally see, and people eventually got there, gold rush or whatever it was, and then they started undigging the buildings. Like I could see that, but it seems like a time stretch that is way crazier as opposed to the information and stuff that we have, let's say in Europe. Like that makes more sense to me. So there is a little kind of confusion there, but I'll let you continue. Sorry.
Well, I was pretty much in. I just got one more statement to make. But I want to kind of talk about that for just a minute. I'm not denying the fact that during the times that those pictures were taken, yes, I do believe people were riding horse and buggy at those times. But I think those cities were already there, and when those pictures were taken, I kind of think that they were unpopulated cities, and that's when we have things like uh, the explorers going across America, finding all these great areas, and then you get to the California gold rush. And did that happen in the 1900s? I don't know. I wasn't there. However, a family could provide for their family by working together and just living off the land. Nowadays, we can't get in our pickup truck without buying 100 different permits to go to the store. Uh, has technology advanced over the years? Absolutely not. It's decreased. Uh, People back then could so they could take care of an entire farm, cows, chickens, people, uh, everything, just in their normal everyday life. And sure, it was tough, but they could do it. Nowadays, can we?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of off, off topic, but no, I feel yeah. To
It's
me,
still on topic. It's still on topic. I'm just saying our uh our knowledge is decreasing. And it's kind of like the whisper down the lane thing. I think the person closest to the source knows the true answer, and the last person to hear it only knows gossip and something totally different.
totally, yeah.
That's what we're experiencing now. Because I mean, just look at the world. We're basically I'm gonna say 99% dependent on the 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 infrastructure, our roads, our gas and electricity, our water supply. We're dependent on someone else to supply that to us, and we just pay them money.
I,
Um,
I I would like to get back to Nimrod and stuff because we don't have that much time, and I get like
well,
anything can connect back to Nimrod.
it's just a closing thought, and this is the last thing on my notes for it, and I do hope we get questions on this because I got a lot more I can talk about. But I wrote this down, and sorry, I'm just reading it. But it says, when it comes to the Tower of Babel, even though almost every tribe and nation across the earth has a description of the tower and what happened to it, there is limited information. On the same note, there is little to no evidence of a worldwide mud flood. So, what buried the buildings? What took place? Now, that's kind of my closing thought, and the best of my ability, that's the only thing I can really figure. And from the time of the flood till now, that holds any evidence of causing something like a mud flood to happen, or a dust storm. Look at the Great Depression. Okay, when they started cloud seeding and stuff like that, all of a sudden there was a year long drought, and the whole earth turned to dust. Basically, nothing could grow. It was no water to nourish the plants and stuff like that. It was basically a wasteland. The whole earth, not just America. It was everywhere. But just something like a dust storm. It's just 1 year without rain caused the Great Depression. Can you imagine a tower that size turning a portion of it turning to dust, covering the earth, and portion of it sinking in the ground or falling over, whichever sounds better to you? Something happened. It either fell over or it sunk. Um, but something like that could have caused the earthquakes and stuff. Could you imagine the difference between that happening and something just like a year-long drought? Or did it happen at the same time?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it could definitely cause what is described as the mud flood. I think like I also agree with like we're far away from the source, so we have less direct knowledge um, than than previous before us, and then that's why I think that thank the Father for and His Son for sending us the deposit of the Spirit, so that we can have insights that's heavenly. And but when it comes to living and all that, I view it differently. I am not a slave. I go to work, I pay bills, but I choose to do those things. And even if you want to tell me, oh, you say you choose those things, but you have to do them. Well, yes, I also have to breathe. So am I a slave to my body? I also have to eat. So am I a slave to my gut? So to a certain degree, you're as free or slave as you choose to be. And
Well,
once you're
right, quick,
free,
Vader,
you're
our
free
breath,
indeed. Yeah, go
our,
ahead. You go ahead.
I was just wanted to point out our breath and our hunger. That those are things that Yah gives us, not any kind of government. So, are we a slave to the government, or are we a slave to Yah? I would rather be a slave to Yah.
Totally. Awesome.
Sorry.
All right. No worries. All right. Well, if anyone else has anything that they want to bring up, go ahead now. I think we're going to shut down just a little bit early tonight. And for this one, we'll come back to next episode with another episode about Nimrod. We're gonna get into like the more of the secular stuff, and kind of occult mystery religion stuff, and where he's kind of pinpointed out throughout all of those. So I'm excited about that, and I should have the fun Nimrod tower animation done. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, so I'm going to bring up some stuff. If y'all want to go ahead and kind of start closing out. Right now. I'm just gonna find the comments from last episodes, read those out, and then we'll say our goodbyes. So if y'all would.
Well,
I'd like to say shalom, y'all. Sorry I'm late. Hello, Daryl. Hello, goodbye, Daryl. Hi, Vader, Anthony. Y'all, good to see y'all.
Oh yeah,
well,
I saw you came here in a little bit. We've been talking, but we always love when you join us.
Right
And
on.
life happens, so no worries.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something about the tower and the size and all that too. A little bit of the advocate, but then a little bit different. Um, I seen a program where they went trying to figure out where it was built and stuff, and they did their mathematics, scientific kind of understanding stuff, and figured how much pressure was on the bricks that they built. How high could they build? Like before the very bricks themselves would crush. Um, and so they were kind of trying to defute everything, but then again, in scripture it says like they thoroughly burned the bricks. I mean, they were making ceramic really hard, and
who knows? I know this much is like we've got Roman concrete these days that the Romans built that's better than the concrete that we have today. You know,
Yeah,
that
and
was
we
like
have
a
we have no idea what their recipe for their bricks were. So to assume they're like just our normal materials and then base it upon that
exactly.
would be asinine.
We
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
we actually do have what they built the tower out of. It says it was bricks cooked in fire, and I can't remember exactly where it says that, but
No, it
I did.
says it in scripture, but do you know what the bricks were made out of?
Yeah, what kind of mud? You know, because I mean, could that be clay? You know, because clay, you could turn into ceramic, which would be a lot tougher than mud of what we're thinking of just dirt. Wet dirt.
According
So
to that statement I read earlier today, I just happened to run across it on Google. I haven't looked into it, but yeah, they did say it was a different type of brick, and it's only found in the area of what they describe as Shinar between the two cities. Um, but they actually found that particular stone or brick with the cement that's described in the Bible that was to connect all the bricks. But like I said,
okay,
more into that. Um, but it did say that it was only found there. But now that report was given to the who did I what's that museum, the one
Smithsonian.
Smithsonian. I'm sorry, sorry. Yeah, Smithsonian. So of course they're probably going to go hide all the evidence.
Right.
And they probably already have. I don't know when the article was written. I did see a date and I wrote it down, but I don't remember where I wrote it down at. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know why they don't call that thing the Masonium.
yeah, no doubt, bro. Exactly. But Daryl, I didn't see you jump in, but Shabbat Shalom to you, brother. Man, it's always a pleasure to speak.
Right on, Shabbat Shalom, brother. Yeah, I missed y'all's episode. I'll have to go back and check it out.
Yeah, and get ready for next week as well, because we're gonna kind of be continuing on this. But I'm ready. I
Yeah.
pulled up the information or pulled up what I wanted to show everyone. So these are the comments from the last show. So I want to go ahead and read those off. Thanks for everyone that does leave a comment. It does really help us out. First one is from my wife. It was cool to hear Latter-day Saints turning point with the curtain tear and just to hear how biblical cosmology helps scriptures make sense. Thanks for sharing, brother. And Flatterday, the legend himself, said this show rocks. Deciphering Truth said, as in sank to the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, it sure did. And then Latter-day Saint said, all rights reserved, void were prohibited. That was pretty funny. And then last but not least, on Take on the World, this was a pretty cool one. This was from White Wabbit Warrior. It says, first I want to share you men, thank you men for sharing. I was agnostic until I opened the door to flat earth. It was flat earth that inspired me to read scripture, and it was scripture that led me to the Father. As for the marky mark, there are several verses that say in the right hand or in the forehead. The marky goes in the bloodstream, which goes into our bodies. It is said that we keep our hearts pure and our minds strong. We place our right hand over our heart. Our mind is our temple, forehead. God knows our hearts and our minds. I will never consent to this mark, for I do believe it's sinister, but for those that did can repent. Purify the heart and mind. God is merciful and forgiving. God bless. Thank you. Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. Um, I think the Marky Mark is definitely this Jabbity Jab is definitely a precursor to it. I just don't think it fulfills all of the things now in this place. But obviously that could change. But it does look like, for the most part, at least for me, that there is quite a bit of kickback in it. So I think they thought they were going to get to go a lot further in their plans with the whole beer bug, but I don't think they're getting to go as far as they wanted to personally. But anyways, White Wabbit Warrior, thank you for your comment. And everyone else that watches this now or later, guys here, everyone, go leave a comment. Tell us what you thought. Throw in a point that we didn't see in the chat that you really wanted to share. Whatever it was, it really helps the channel to continue and grow. So we do really appreciate it. But other than that, let's go ahead and start saying our goodbyes. I'll cut it off to Anthony to say his goodbyes as always. Go ahead, brother.
All right. Well, I just want to say one more time, Shabbat Shalom to everybody, and thank everybody for showing up and hanging out with us and listening to our hully gully stuff sometimes. Um, I hope people look into some of the stuff that I was saying about this as compared to the mud floods, and please ask questions because I question it too. This is something that I just ran across, and again, this was something that was whispered in my ear, and I think by the Holy Spirit or His angel. I think some sort of a message was sent to me this way. However, when it comes to the Tower of Babel destruction and the so-called mud floods of the world, I think I've got a lot more in the favor of what I believe might have happened as to what the mud floods have, because it's almost nothing that's written about an actual mud flood. But anyway, if anybody can come up with something or kind of question this, I'm welcome to questions on it. But again, I'm just now looking into this and seeing it for myself as well. So listen to what I say, but don't listen to a word I say. Please test things out and prove it for ourselves. That's the main thing.
Totally.
Don't believe a word I say.
Yeah, totally. All right.
But
Well, yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say Shabbat Shalom to everybody and many blessings and much love and thank you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Shabbat shalom. All right, Daryl. Well, you joined us a little late, but of course we're gonna let you say your highs and goodbyes. So if you don't mind,
Okay.
brother.
I was wondering if I was going to have to do both at once, but I already said hi. But anyhow, Shabbat Shalom. I'm glad I was able to make it. Yeah, like Anthony said, much love. That's what we're all about, and we're learning how to do it better every time we get together and we go over these things and look for truth. So, absolutely, any questions and stuff like that is always awesome. Even if we don't have the answers at the moment, you know, it's a seed planted that, may spark an interest that we'll find it together. So that's what it's about, being together in fellowship. So thank you for being here. Much love and Shabbat Shalom.
Indeed, awesome. All right, well, I'm gonna kind of reiterate a couple little things, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Of course, I'll throw it over to Frankie in just a second to let him close it out with the song. But I also want to remind y'all, if y'all have not joined us on Discord, there's a link in the description. Come in there. You'll join into the Welcome Center, and then we'll give you the member role. And there's a lot of conversations to be had there. So come join us. Look to what we have to offer. Offer some of us some of the stuff you got. So that's what we're about here. We're about that puzzle piece and putting this grand puzzle together, and we're going to do it together as brothers and sisters, and we're going to do it, and we're going to walk in love as we do it, regardless of where our brothers and sisters are along their path. We're always going to walk in love. That's what we're going to do. But we are also about iron sharpening iron, and that causes in order to iron to sharpen iron, you need heat, friction, and the removal of material. So we got to be all up to realize that we should all justly hold on and observe the right to be wrong, because we've all been wrong in the before, and we're all wrong right now. But as long as we're diligently seeking the truth and having our heart after the Father's, and in that relationship, then that's where we want to be. And if you're not there, then we definitely want to work and get there. So again, thank you all for being here. Check out the Discord link. Come join us in the conversations. We have them all throughout the week, not only in voice but also chat. So yeah, it's a great place. So come join us. Other than that, I love you all, brothers and sisters, dearly. I'll throw it off to my brother Frankie.
Frankie, go ahead, but I got one more thing.
Well, go ahead then, Frank.
Go ahead,
Anthony.
Anthony.
No, go ahead, Frank. I'll say this.
Anthony's gonna close out, so just go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, I just want to shout out my dear brother, Deciphering Truth. He and I had a bit of a misunderstanding and a little bit discourse, I guess, the last week or so, couple of weeks maybe. I just want to shout him out and tell him that I'm sorry for misunderstanding, and I hope in the future we can come together and discuss things like men to men, like we did the other night. But we have had a discussion. Everything is kind of put behind us. There was a misunderstanding, and like brothers should do, we hugged each other's neck and made up. I'm very sorry that I had forgotten to say that in my closing thing, y'all.
Nope,
That's
no
a
worries.
perfect segue into what I was going to say. So I got a little song I'm working on. The chorus is, when you live in love, you're a child of God. That's how they know that we are children of God, when we walk in love. And the song that's coming up is Love is Your Witness. So when you love one another, when we love one another, we forgive one another, we continue to fellowship with one another, even though we have differences. Our love for one another and for the people that are around us, that are saved and unsaved, is our witness. So I just want to say Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I pray you have a blessed week. And I hope you were blessed by this stream and all the conversation that we had. And we're going to play it out. Love is your witness. Remember, the love you give is the love you witness of Yah.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Love is your witness. Love is your witness. Let it shine on. Let it shine on. It's better to give. That's the way. It's how you live and what you say. A good deed can rise.